morning, energy post readers, energy enthusiasts, and fellow change makers. It's a privilege to join and have each of you come here today and join us in this first and one of its kind ever energy post discussion. We definitely are looking forward to connecting with like-minded industry experts and energy enthusiasts as all of you have joined today. This is a platform for dialogue on the future of energy, as you get one-on-one insight and highlights of the articles in the in the second edition of the Energy Post magazine. I hope you are excited to join this conversation. Before I continue, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Judith Mobo. I'm a senior communication officer and we take you through. Are we able to mute this, please? Thank you. Let us continue. As we embark on this journey through the heart of Africa's energy landscape and beyond, as we explore the transformative power of renewable energy, as we get insight into the imperative of sustainability and collaborative efforts, I urge all of you to be part of this conversation. I want us today to have a discussion, to have a good narrative whereby we are able to discuss about the future of the energy sector in Africa. So once again, welcome to this live discussion, which promises to be quite insightful and engaging. And I promise you it's going to be worth your time. We are live on KenGen's YouTube pages. So those who are not able to join in through the webinar, you can join in through the YouTube. That is the handle at KenGen Kenya, as well as those who are joining us through the Zoom link. Welcome. We are glad to have the online team. Today also we have an amazing physical audience that is joining us. Of course, the panelists are here. These are part of the contributors and the writers of the Energy Post. It is good to note that they are not just made up of KenGen staff. We have a mix of expertise and talent from within the energy sector. I'll be introducing them shortly and you'll get to understand and engage and hear more insight from them. Also joining us here today is the University of Nairobi engineering students. Karibuni sana. At KenGen, we pride in nurturing talent, developing potential, as well as mentorship. So we found it best to have the students join us here today because we believe they're the next breed of experts, of engineers, not just within the energy sector, not just within Kenya, but also across the continent and the globe. So welcome. We have the editorial team who are present here today. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we have KenGen staff who are one of the major patronizers of the Energy Post. Thank you for joining us. Of course, we can't forget the online team, those who join us through YouTube and those who join us through the webinar link. Welcome, and we hope and intend for this to be a very good and live engagement. Feel free to tell us where you are tuned in from. You can just type in from whichever platform you're joining in. Tell us your name, where you're joining in from. I believe we are not having an audience of just from the energy sector, because part of the things we'll be talking about today is partnerships and collaborations. So we've extended the invite to other expertise across the, not just in the energy sector. So we welcome all of you. I know we have some of our stakeholders and friends who are outside from Kenya who are joining us. So welcome and feel free to tell us where you're joining in from. Let us engage together. Let us understand the audience that we have today. So now straight into the Energy Post. For those who may at any point have not interacted or don't know what the Energy Post is. So this is a magazine, and it is the leading energy sector magazine that is produced and put together by KenGen. But as I mentioned, the writers are not just from KenGen. They're not just from the energy sector. We try to get writers and contributors from across the country, and that's where I think you are also joining us here today. So it is a biannual magazine, and this is the second edition. And we saw it fit and best to just have a discussion on what we've been able to write about and discuss, and also to get feedback from you on what else you want us to write, and also for you to be able to engage with us and also maybe contribute. I'll be giving more details on that. So now I'll get straight to the panelists. We are joined personally and virtually by the panelists who are experts in matters of green infrastructure, sustainability, oil and gas, and technology, and also governance in issues of energy. So at this point, I think it will be best for the panelists to introduce themselves. So I will ask each of them to introduce yourself. Just give us a brief of who you are, what you do, and perhaps what you will be talking to us about today. And I think make it brief, make it like the way you would do in a tweet, to put your words, not so many. So we can start at the far end. Frank, welcome.
Good morning, Africans, and welcome to the Energy Post live discussion. My name is Frank Degrochin. I am the Marketing and Corporate Communication Manager at Kengen. For this purpose, I'm the editor of this publication. I welcome you to Nairobi. We're having the beautiful sunshine here. I think there's no city in the world like this. So we look forward to engaging with you and getting your feedback also as well.
Good morning. My name is Purity Mawia Mutua. I'm a Senior Corporate Communications Officer from the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. I must say I'm happy to be here and also to contribute to the article that was written by my colleague on Africa's climate. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Morning. Those who are online and those who are here. My name is George Abulu. I'm the CEO of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. Basically, I'm here also to support the good work Kengen is doing. I think there's a really important part of communications in energy that things like the Energy Post actually help us to push forward. So asanteni, looking forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Wandera. I'm the Assistant Manager in Kengen, handling external communication and media relations. In the Energy Post, I serve in 2 roles. One, I'm the sub-editor of the publication, and I'm also a writer in the publication. My focus and area of discussion in this debate is energy cooperation. I would like you to discuss energy cooperation and just stay tuned when I'm given an opportunity to explain it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gakonga. I am a geology graduate from SEKU, and I'm also one of the contributors. I've written a couple of articles on climate change and renewable energy, and so I'm very happy to be here to be able to contribute on how green energy can save our economy and also strengthen our currency. Yes, I'm looking forward to an impactful and insightful discussion. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Thuo Njoroge Daniel. I'm an energy economist by profession. I'm currently the Director of Research and Policy at Kanula Zanauti. Kanula Zanauti is a consultancy firm that basically deals with matters energy. And I'm glad to be around to have this conversation on the green energy agendas.
Thank you so much. We had a panelist who was joining us online. Anthony Kahindi, online. If not, we can continue. Oh, sorry, I think he's in. If not, we can continue. Oh, sorry, I think he's in.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. I hope he'll be able to give his insights later on. So one theme that is constant throughout the stories, the articles of the Energy Post is the power of collaboration, partnerships, innovations and sustainability for change within the energy sector. My apologies. Can we have this reduced? Thank you. As I was saying, one of the themes or some of the themes that you'll find are a bit constant within most of the articles that have been written are the power of collaboration and partnerships. We talk about innovations and sustainability for change. So we'll be discussing more about these themes as we continue. For those who've not been able to interact with the Energy Post, we have a digital copy whereby you can get from the KenGen website. That is kengen.co.ke, kengen.co.ke. Then you'll go to the information center and the fourth icon, you'll be able to see the Energy Post. This will be for the purposes of you being able to understand when we're having the discussions here with the panelists. Now, we'll go straight to the questions, or rather to the interaction and discussion with the panelists. Frank, you're the chief editor. Why the name the Energy Post?
I wasn't expecting that question to come, but back in the days when I was doing journalism in school, we were introduced to some of the leading magazines and newspapers in the world. And I think the Post came out as something as, I think most of you could have read the Post, as something of the bench gold standards of magazines and newspapers. We were looking at the Energy Post to be something like of an authority on energy matters in this region of Africa, not just in Kenya, but across the continent. So we wanted a name that would probably talk to the Kenyan audience, but also speak to the audience outside Kenya. And we thought Energy Post would be something impactful, easy to understand, easy to relate with, and then we can then open it up beyond Kenyan. Of course, I know there are those who wanted us to call it something close to Kenyan. Before we had a magazine called Generator, which of course was about the generation process of energy. And it made a lot of sense to us as Kenyan. But here we are looking at what can we have that would not only speak to Kenyan or the Kenyan audience, but to audiences outside this jurisdiction. So yes, Energy Post is looking to take that niche that is currently not there. The African space is really big in terms of energy. We have just about 40% of people who are connected to electricity currently. And the wider 60% is yet to access electricity. And as we say, energy really impacts life from its basic forms to the most advanced economies. So then how do we then start telling our African stories? How do we then start leading the way in terms of carving that African future in terms of expansion and access to electricity? So yes, that's why Energy Post.
Thank you so much, Frank. I think something that I've understood from that explanation is there is so much that is happening within the energy sector, but we're not talking about it. We're not telling the stories, we're not sharing the narrative. So KenGen came out and took that opportunity and said, let's do the Energy Post. Let's give you a platform whereby you're able to write about the stories that you are, the things that you're doing within your various sectors. So that is why the Energy Post is here with us. And I believe that is why we are even having this live discussion here today. Back to you, Frank. The first story talks about power beyond borders. This was an interview you did, exclusive interview with Eric Franstrom, the World Bank's practice manager for energy in East Africa. Are you able to share one or two key takeaways from that discussion? And how are these insights? Tell us how they could be able to influence the Kenya's path toward the green transition, particularly when we talk about funding and infrastructure.
All right, I remember that day like it was yesterday. We went to World Bank's offices downtown, and Eric met us as friends. I was meeting him for the second time that day. The first time we met, we were at a conference discussing the East African power pool arrangement in terms of how can then East African countries share their resources in terms of energy. So Eric made a good presentation then, and I approached him and told him I want to do a story with you. And he was, yeah, let's do it. Come to the World Bank. And I went to the World Bank. We sat down with him for about 2 to so hours. He began by talking about his personal life. He's a very lively guy. He likes Kenya. He lives here with a family. On a typical day like today, you will find him at Karura Forest running under the great Nairobi sunshine, something I enjoy doing also over the weekend. You'll find me with my dogs at Karura Forest. That is one thing that defines the Nairobi business environment. You are able to do business and also have fun in this city. He also likes the foods and the eateries in Nairobi. He spoke about down from the Madondos to the upmost of eateries in Nairobi. And I think he's a very lively person. World Bank and KenGen have shared a long history in terms of energy generation. Specifically on this article, we are talking about the opportunities in the East African power pool. How can we open up the East African countries that if Uganda has got a lot of hydro resources, Ethiopia has got mega hydro dams, Tanzania is really coming up with gas, Kenya has got unlimited potential in geothermal potential capacity. And all these countries, a time will come when our economies will be as big as, let's say, South Africa. Are we able to individually provide electricity to our citizens? Are we able to power our own economies with what we currently have? I think the answer is no. Should each of us in East Africa do an excess of 60 gigawatts, it means we'll need to get more. Our geothermal is only 10,000 gigawatts, 10,000 megawatts. That is the upper limit of geothermal. Same applies to hydro, wind, and all those other sources. They have a limit. But if we open up the market, then we're able to share what we have. When you're strong on geothermal, you share with those who are strong in hydro and that kind of thing. So that is the future that World Bank is looking at, and they've committed to go into, first of all, building capacities, helping in accessing funding. But the one thing that World Bank and KenGen shares the most, again, is the bit about being sustainable, being sensitive to the communities, the people whom you exist, where your power plants are. Don't just go planting power plants all across the country without paying attention to those people who then are your host communities. How do you give solutions while at the same time remaining sustainable? So there's a lot more in the article. I would invite all of you to find some time and read more, and even contribute by a way of sending us your articles. I think we can discuss more about it as we go along.
Thank you so much, Frank. And I will quote in Eric Fanstrom's words: "We hope for sustainable energy landscape for Kenya, but also setting a precedence for the entire African continent green transition by 2030. He was very enthusiastic by saying he believes this is possible. Let's see if we can. As we continue, I will move over to Emmanuel. As we are having the live discussion, feel free to write in your comments on the link, or rather the webinar, the comments section, as well as the YouTube page. Emmanuel, your article on page 18, you talk about energy cooperation. We have heard about the East African power pool. This happened in Nairobi, I think in February, and in Uganda in August. You'll be able to share to us more about what is the East African power pool. What is it that they're coming together to talk about and to discuss? So you said East African power pool considers opening its doors to private energy players in the region. In what ways do you foresee this impacting not only the energy access, but also the region's overall economic development? And how should governments balance the regulation with innovation to encourage private sector involvement? I know, as I mentioned, we're talking a lot about partnerships. So here is where Emmanuel will explain to us what is the need or what is the purpose of us having private energy players come into the region.
Thank you so much, Judith. I think we'll start by what is energy cooperation. Energy sector has various players, and to put it in context, Africa has about a population of 1.5 billion people. Out of this big population, only about 600 million people don't have access to electricity. This for me is an area of concern. And this can be explained in various ways. One, maybe their grids are very small. Maybe they cannot invest. You see, government has always been traditionally the original investor in energy in countries. And this government has to balance social, economic needs of the budget and the economic of the people. So some have argued that we have excess power. Some have argued our grid is too small to bring new power plants and big other things. But from the business perspective, energy is about selling electricity. And through this, I think energy cooperation is the only way to move forward, because they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. Through energy cooperation, East African Power Pool has started something very unique. And it's not unique to Africa. If you look at the advanced society in Europe, their grid is interconnected, meaning there's free movement of electricity from other parts of the country, so that small countries do not need as much to invest in energy. They can invest in other things, and those who are big can sell power. A case in point is France. France, 70% of France energy comes from nuclear energy. They don't consume it, they sell to the rest of the European society. So small countries that do not have that luxury will be able to do that. So through energy cooperation, and in Africa, we have something called the East African Power Pool, which was set up in the year 2005, to see how to integrate the African energy highway and connection and energy development. Unique to it is that Africa, unlike most other societies in Asia, and we are lucky, we are given natural sources of energy from God. So you might find the blessings are not equal. Some may be very strong in hydro. Look at Congo, look at Ethiopia, they are very strong in hydro. Kenya, as my previous speaker, Frank, has mentioned, we have geothermal. But the challenge is some don't have all this. Like there are some countries that are run 100%, I will not mention the names, by running fossil fuel, but they need power to their population. So to address the issue of one, access through energy power pool mix and the integration, power will freely move from one part of the country where it's plenty to the other point. That has two impacts. One, the economic impact. For the investors in the energy sector, they'll have markets to sell, because there's this argument in some countries where they say we have excess power. But if this power is moving across in the power pool, when our grids are interconnected, it means that discussion will be dead on arrival. So it means there's economic potential and opening up new energy markets for generators like KenGen, independent power producers, and such. The other flip the coin is the other side, where technical. You see, grids require some specific requirements. So for you to play in the power, you must meet the standard requirements to play at that level. That means the voltage, the frequency, and all that. So to address this, the East African Power Pool has set up an independent regulator that will be the one in charge of the technical aspects and the economic aspect of the power. And this is in progress. I think the legislation is being worked on. I don't know the progress, but it's an area that also enhance this energy cooperation. And thirdly, through that, also the access bit, because when power moves freely in the region, it will be able to impact life, because we generate power not only for keeping, but just also for impacting life. So through this power pool, power will be able to move from places that are plenty and low. So in Africa, there will be free movement of energy. And the future is, we have East African Power Pool, but we're looking at the South African Power Pool, the Northern African Power Pool. When all these power pools are connected, we'll have an Africa that is united in terms of energy transmission. Most of it, this is the ice in the cake, and you'll read it more in the story, is that the power pools are mostly driven by governments and utilities, which are public utilities like KenGen are members of that. But the East African Power Pool did something very interesting. They're opening up that space where they can bring in independent power producers and also independent transmission developers, because in energy generation, these are where there are challenges. The independent power producers and maybe the infrastructure developers, they bring in the muscle in terms of resource, because government, the same money, they have to take care of social, economic for the community. But these other guys might have the resources. So that nexus, the link between these different players, it's something that I think the East African Power Pool is going to add the juice. And I'm really looking at the discussion, because in the article I wrote, that was something that was discussed extensively in the meeting, though not concluded. But I'm sure I'm looking forward to the next, I'll follow up the story. And if that is concluded, I think it's something that we can build on it and share. I'll talk endlessly, but just to invite you to read the story. You'll appreciate the intrigues and how power is done, and to make you understand better. But at the end of the day, it's the end user that person who flips the switch. All this for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manuel. I'm really, really loving this conversation. I can feel the enthusiasm as our panelists talk. So for you to be part of the conversation, please follow, comment, and post using the hashtag #GreenEnergyKE and also the hashtag #EnergyPosts. Be part of the conversation, say something. As I'd asked before, some of you have already tuned in and are giving us comments. So I'll read 1 or 2 comments for those who are tuned in live in the webinar. Hello, my name is Philemon, graduate from Rift Valley Institute of Science and Technology. I'm joining in from Kericho. Karibu sana Philemon. We have Boniface Kitetu, a chemist, laboratory expert. He says he is passionate about green energy and climate change. He's very interested in health, environment, connected from Nairobi. We also have, let me look for a lady. My name is Esther Wangare. I'm a renewable energy professional. I'm joining in from Nairobi. We also have Faustin Gila, an instrumental and automation engineer joining in from Nairobi, who says they are passionate about green energy and climate change. This is able to help us understand some of the people who are joining in the audience, what they would love to hear us talk about, and what they would also love to contribute to as we continue with this conversation. Now, continue, stay tuned. I'll be having 1 or 2 or 3, a couple of questions in between as we continue having a live discussion, and whoever gets his first will get a gift from me, regardless of your location. Now we'll move to Purity. So many people you've heard from the comments, they want to hear more about climate change, climate conversation. So Purity, you're here representing Albert Barongo, who speaks about Africa's climate against a sustainable future. That was on page 36 for those who have the copy of the Energy Post. How does the public equate success amidst a climate crisis? How can African nations strike a balance between, yes, we need to grow our economies, we need to have a bit of industrial growth and development, but there's also the urgent need to address the environmental conservation crisis. So how are we able to strike this balance? By making sure that our economies grow, but also making sure that we are taking care of the environment.
Thank you so much, Judith, for the question and the conversation as we go on. I look at it as actually a tug of war kind of situation. So on one end, you have the need, we really need to industrialize as a continent, and energy is at the cornerstone of any industrial developing country. Then on the other side, we have the need or the urgency to actually take care of the environment, because if you don't take care of the environment, our livelihood is actually dependent on the environment. Frank has just alluded to the fact that the World Bank CEO likes to go to Karura Forest and enjoy. There's just something you get when you connect with the environment. So there's that need for us to take care of the environment. And just to even bring context on the urgency that we need, there's a report I came across that was done by Emergency Event Database. And out of that report that was done in 2022, 110 million people were directly affected by climate effect issues. And then we had, out of that, we had a economic loss equating to 8.5 billion USD. That's a lot of money. You can imagine the destruction in terms of infrastructure, building things, of course, based on the impact of the climate change situation. And out of that, of course, there's also the loss of lives. We're talking about fatalities of 5,000 people. Out of it, 48% is from flooding and 43% is from drought. Just that goes to show that if we do not, we are at the risk of losing our lives and, of course, the sustainability for our future. So to answer your question, how do we get to a level where we are, yes, we're taking, the African nations really need to invest in science, technology. That way we are transitioning we have the technology, we have a way we can easily transition from the fossil fuel to, of course, the green energy. We're talking, of course, the geothermal, which KenGen is doing an amazing job, I must say. And of course, the fact that even African countries are embracing new technology. And we cannot talk about clean and new technology and not talk about nuclear technology, because again, it is considered the second most cleanest technology, energy producing technology after solar, by the fact that it does not produce any carbon emission during production. So, and I'm looking at it also in the sense of using technology to actually also sustain where we are. We're already in the situation as is. So how can we use technology to make sure that we improve our livestock and our agricultural production? And I must say there's an initiative called Atoms for Food, which is an initiative that leverage on nuclear technology to leverage, to improve the production of agricultural production and life production. That's just to mention one aspect on how we can use technology. Again, also on how we can even improve our infrastructure, because again, if you're able to have infrastructure that are climate resilient, then that means you're able to have a sustainable. There's no need of you having an infrastructure and then you end up, of course, we are in the and then you end up doing it again. You get what I mean? So need of us to actually invest in science, technology, and innovation. And even as we are investing, we also need to build capacity. We also need to create awareness. I mean, something that is coming very clearly is the fact that we need to let people know where we are, just to appreciate the situation, so that we are able to contribute to it. We're able to make changes as we move. And of course, the aspect of global partnership, which of course has been mentioned, it's very important, because if you're Africa as a continent, of course, we are at a disadvantage because we are still trying to survive the COVID situation. We are still developing. We are still in the process of actually getting to that level where we are saying we are stable. So we also need the global, international partnership in terms of funding, in terms of capacity building, in terms of knowledge sharing and all that stuff. So that is very important, very key, even as we're creating awareness, even as we are investing in science and technology, we also need to invest in that and be committed into the process. Thank you very much.
I think I can summarize pretty what you said, that we need to ensure our policies and practices are aligned with the reality of climate change. And as we continue, the hashtag is the energy post and also green energy KE. Hashtag the energy post. I promised you one or two questions. I'll start with the first question. This goes to both the live audience and also those who are joining us online. Did you know that Kenya ranks among the top 10 geothermal energy producers in the world? What, in terms of megawatts, does Kenya's geothermal energy, KenGen, contribute into the national grid? How many megawatts does KenGen produce or contribute geothermal-wise into the national grid? Online, live audience, whoever will be able to get it.
Can I answer?
No. Before I give the live audience an opportunity, is there anyone online who has the answer? In terms of megawatts, how many megawatts does KenGen produce? How many megawatts of geothermal energy does KenGen produce? I can hear mamas. Anyone online before I give the live audience participants? Rodney says 799 megawatts. You're too close, but not yet. Mark Richard says 965 megawatts. James Nyandigisi, who is actually a staff at Olkaria, says the contribution is 799 megawatts, which is actually not the case. Anyone else? Okay, I will move to the live audience. I had a hand. Yes, Charity. 754 megawatts is correct. Now,
but I think Judy, probably we may need to explain that answer. because the two people who spoke about 799 may actually be right, because if you look at our records, that has been there for a while. The story of geothermal began in Kenya in about 1952. So that is when we were able to do the first successful well in terms of drilling. And then we were able to bring in power plants around 1981 and 85, putting the first Ontario 1 power plant, which had 3 units, each of 15 megawatts. That power plant ran from 1981 until sometime, I think 2 years ago, when it was over 40 years old. And may I say that I'm also old as Ontario. So if you know the year, you know how old I am. So it reached a point when it was retired from the grid. Before it was retired, we were doing 799 as a company. That power plant was taken off the grid when the PPA expired and reached its end of life. But the good news is that currently Kenya is in the process of bringing back this power plant. So we lost 45 megawatts, but by around 2026, end of the year, we are bringing it back even bigger. It's going to be around 63 megawatts, which therefore means we recover the 799 and go beyond as we work towards
Thank you so much, Frank. We'll continue with the discussion. I will move over to Daniel. Your article seems to have quite a lot of numbers, statistics, percentages. You know, maybe the one thing you missed was graphs and pie chart. But it's not shocking because you're an economist. So you talk about green industrialization as a critical pathway to Kenya's energy transition. Given Kenya's ambitious energy goals, which I believe are also achievable and attainable, what are some of the very immediate steps that are needed to drive green industrialization forward? And how can Kenya position itself as a leader within Africa, especially in the face of global competition?
Thank you, Judy, for that question. I believe to respond to that, I would want to give a very brief, precise context, historical context, so that we may appreciate the entire journey and the endeavor into the energy space. So you all remember we had this big blueprint agenda that sometimes in the last 2 decades was fashioned, Vision 2030, we refer to it as that. And in it, there were all these very beautiful aspirations. To sum it up, we say that we aspire to be a high industrialized and high level, high living economy. So, which means that you could imagine that all those kind of developmental agendas that were in it, to be able to meet all these, energy, of course, becomes one of the integral components to be able. And energy actually in the Vision 2030 has been mentioned as an enabler. So soon after then, you remember at around that time, 2003, when we were architecturing and policy makers were putting together the Vision 2030, you remember our connectivity at that time was in the region of about 600,000 connectivity, you can imagine. And that, not to speak, it's since when power was established in the country. And you know when that was? It's around 100 years ago. Power infrastructure first began in this country 100 years ago. So until 2003, we had 600,000 connectivity. Then come to 2019, we had around 70% of the population having been connected to the grid. Then come to 2024, if I could remember, we're in the region of about 9.2 million household being connected to the grid. That speaks to about I think 80% and above. So you can see the compassion, the compassionate political goodwill. I must say this is driven largely by the political economy. there has been exerted effort to ensure that we reach. So it is a deliberate aspect that you are here. And how have you been doing in terms of law, for instance, so that we're able to appreciate that? A lot has been done. Remember, we now have a very robust energy bill. We refer to it as the Energy Act 2019. In it, we've got, I think, in the region, no one else has been able to put in law components, for instance, of about net metering. We are the first jurisdiction. Even South Africa do not have net metering as yet. It is very well captured in the Energy Act 2019. The aspect of feed-in tariffs, Judith, you remember, for the longest time, our energy ecosystem has been largely high. We make, say, big and large energy producers benefit from the feed-in tariffs. But now with the 2019 law, we are able to have even small grids, the mini grids, the solars, the biomass, the biogases, and the PV solars come into play and benefit from the feeds. And that, of course, brings into the perspective the issue of bringing the private sector participation. So you can see this is a universal thing that you want to ensure that everyone is at play. It's no longer government alone, but to ensure that you have a very a level playing field that ensures all stakeholders and investors in energies take place and participate in the energy markets. What are the immediate things that needs to be required so that we ensure that we remain at first? We have been first. Kenya has been first in very many things. What is it that we require? Because that's what you asked me. If you look at, for instance, the energy, the renewable energy tariffs, for instance, and with it, it's the issue about the gazettement of a bill that is required to ensure that we have the legal framework to ensure that the small producers of the renewables, small, are able to participate. The gazettement of that regulations is not in place. I think it's time we ensure that we fast track that law to ensure that it makes it possible for small producers and investors in the energy space to participate. The other aspect I think that comes into my mind is the issue of renewable auctions. We do not have a policy document as yet. Remember, in the recent times, we've been having, particularly in the last regime administration, conversation about renewing and reviewing of the PPAs and all those things. And in that conversation, the head of state at that time did position a moratorium. So that did place a stop on some of all these endeavors. But that moratorium was lifted sometime last year, I think the end of last year. I think I'm keen to be able to understand how far because I think time is in the offing. We should be able to have the energy policy document for the auctions so that also we are able to have the competitive aspect of the players, the investors in that space. The other aspect, I think it's in the, I want to speak about the donor, because you remember the conversation, we want to touch on everyone, particularly when we are having the conversation about funding, maybe solar PVs, even those in the small, not really even the large grid scale or something like that. I am of the view greatly that there should be some kind of a spell, or rather a requirement by the funding bodies on having to have the local content, so that even when you fund these endeavors, because most of these players who come in are usually foreign dominated, then you have an aspect of local content. And I remember Frank and Emmanuel also did in their contribution, they didn't mention about sustainability. So the local content does not only bring the necessary, or rather even transfer the necessary skill to the domestic population, or rather the enterprise in that space that are playing in the for instance solar or wind or any other mini grid, but also for sustainability. Remember, some of these technologies are here for us to stay with. We are living with them. So we want also a situation whereby our people come for instance, in the form of O&M, operations and maintenance. A solar PV has a lifespan of maybe 15, I don't know, 25 thereabout. Then you change the PV panels. That should be done going forward by our natives, the people in the country. So I think I'll stop from here, and we will have more conversation on that.
Thank you so much. There's already a comment coming in for you. Julius Wandera says Uganda is already has net metering regulations in 2023. But thank you for that comment. That is very good to note. There is 1 or 2 comments on solar energy. Victor and Dennis, I'll be able to answer that as we go ahead, because there was actually a question on what KenGen is doing on solar. So that will be answered when we have our question. As we continue this discussion, the journey of energy exploration and discovery, please be part of this conversation. And you might be wondering, perhaps, what can you do for you to be on this panel next time? You know, the 3rd issue is coming up. So it's as simple as putting in your article, the energy post, the address, the email address to which you'll be sending in your article or your story or your contribution is energypost@kengen.co.ke. energypost@kengen.co.ke. So if you're interested to give us some of your input, some of what you're doing, please feel free and be part of the contributors, be part of the writers, and we'll be checking in your story for the next issue. I will move on to my second question. Hydropower is the largest source of renewable energy in Africa. Name the 5 largest KenGen-owned hydropower plants, specifically in the eastern region. That is the 7 Forks Cascade. What are at least the 5? And you need to get all the 5. KenGen-owned hydropower plants in the eastern region or the 7 Forks Cascade. Of course, we will give first priority to the audience online, 5 of them. I want to be giving you a hint. I shouldn't, but as we continue, you can be looking at the KenGen website. All this information is there. KenGen website is kengen.co.ke, and that is where you can also get the digital copy of the energy posts. Anything coming in online? Our physical audience, you can start preparing those.
Maybe as we wait for that answer to come up, I wanted to just touch on what it mentioned about the aspect of bringing the local content. I think that's a very important aspect. If you look at it right from government, we've been told that of all our procurements, about 30% of them should be from the local people. But when it comes to mega projects, like the ones we put up in terms of our power plants, and that's when then the rubber hits the road, because that's when we bring in the big monies. Japanese, the Americans, the Europeans, and the EIBs, the Germans, the KfW, the big money is coming there. But then the process of developing the power plant, right from infrastructure, and then until now you go to finish and commission the power plant. I think there is need for more developers to consider local expertise in terms of the labor that is coming in there. The material that is going towards building these installations should be from the local communities, which is something that KenGen does currently. But over and beyond that, if you visit any power plants across the country, geothermal, hydros, the thermals, and even the solar power plant that you run in Garissa, you will realize that all employees are Kenyans. None of them is from out there. So we'd wish that even as we bring in new technologies, and solar is a big space currently, and like is rightly mentioned, a lot of the expertise in solar is important. how then can we build capacities of our local people that when technologies are imported, we are able to run them locally using our own people? I think that's a big space going forward. So the investors who've got money out there, the Kenyan people who say, I don't have jobs and those kind of things, I think the energy space is ripe for small time to big time investments in terms of creating jobs and ensuring that we are able to maintain these facilities long after the developers have left.
Thank you so much, Frank. Feel free to continue engaging. There's an answer here. However, she just gave us four, not five. So I'm still looking for five. I'll give this opportunity to the physical audience. We will, our students today, anyone? The 5 owned hydropower plants in the eastern region of the Seven Forks Cascade.
You studied in DHC. Is it DHC my geography?
Guys, I gave you a leakage. It have been on the Kenyan website already.
I think there are 7 probably.
No, I said 5.
Top 5.
Hera, go ahead. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Now I will put more measures when you are answering this question. I will leave out the Kenyan staff because the first 2 questions have actually been, in fact, interesting enough. The first 2 questions have been answered by Kenyan staff who are in the sustainability department. So the answer is Masinga, Kamburu, Gitaru, Kindaruma, and Kiambere. These are the 5 hydropower plants in the eastern region, Seven Forks Cascade. I think I have 2 or more questions. So be prepared. Please listen into the panel because some of the questions will actually be gotten from what we are discussing here today. Continue with the conversation, hashtag the energy hosts. We will move to Elizabeth, who is a budding geologist. And a fun fact about Elizabeth, she was an intern at KenGen. How long ago?
2 years.
2 years ago. So you see, if you know me, you know I love mentorship. I love working with the young people. And look at her. 2 years back, she was an intern and she's now sitting on the panel. That's a good thing. So you write about green energy, the savior of Kenya's economy. That's such a big word, savior. Can you expound more on how you envision green energy transforming Kenya's economy in the short and the long term? And what role do young professionals, as you've seen today, we've invited some students to join us. What role do young professionals also have so that they can play in advancing this agenda?
Thank you very much for that. I was writing this article last year, remember our currency had really weakened against challenges. And to counter this, actually the CBK advocates that there should be local manufacturing. From my fellow panelists, you can hear that they're talking about local people being injected into green energy or just any other industry. And so this helps be able to retain the talent pool and also to be able to have, when there's local manufacturers, it's very easy, even in events of repairs. It's very fast and quick. You just call them and they come. You don't need to get them to fly over an ocean just to come and be able to solve these issues. And also you find that it's very important because local people also understand our problems better than other countries. They know our challenges and they can be able to make better equipment than other countries because they understand us better. So that was very important during that time, and it should be considered, just like you said. They should be like a policy. When we have these foreign investors, they should be able to make some manufacturing plants here in Kenya and so that they can hire the job youths, and then they can continue with the repairs and maintenances, continue constructing and proposals and all these other things. So in the short term, you find, of course, there's job creation. When, for example, like a company like Kengen wants to build another geothermal plant, they'll call in engineers, they'll call in contractors. So that's job employment, which will lead to higher revenues and higher incomes. Also remember at that time, the electricity prices were so high. So consumers had to forego other expenditures so that they can afford electricity, because it's a necessity. We need it to run business operations. And so when there's higher income, companies also, there's more salary, and people will be able to buy other things. You see this luxury, sorry, these luxuries that you had to forego so that you can be able to afford electricity. Now you'll be able to buy them, and you'll be able to help these businesses grow. Example, like sausages. Maybe you had to maybe you had to stop buying sausages because the price of electricity was really high. Now you can be able to buy them. So you're upgrading someone's business. Also, you find that with renewable energy, there is improved infrastructure. In a place where there is a proposed site for any renewable activity like geothermal or even wind farm, there will be industrialization and also growth of towns. So social amenities will come there. There'll be roads, they'll be built, which will also help the economy. You find that in Kenya, just like my fellow panelists have said, we really rely more on foreign investments, and we need them. In fact, Kentraco, they need a lot of money, around $1,400 million. And so far they have like a quarter of it. And they plan to get the remaining funds from private investments. If Kenya is able to position itself well, which it has, but to be able to make good policy measures, they'll attract these private investments. And some of these policy measures you find like, when you look at some of the challenges that private investors face when looking for opportunities here in Kenya, a term like red tape always comes out. Red tape is it's when a country like Kenya has so many multiple offices. So to get approvals, you need to travel a lot, and investors are hoping to get one single office. Rwanda has one, where you'll be able to have all these processes done in one place. It will also help in making it a quick and seamless operation. So to be able to counter this, young professionals are really tech savvy and they have good coding skills. They can, if they're employed into the government or these ministries, they'll be able to create these technologies, and they'll be able to simplify all these many acts. There's so many acts. When you look at the many policies, there are so many, it is subdivided into so many subdivisions, you get confused. Even I did when I was trying to read them. There's so many. So Gen Zs are very good at simplifying complex topics, as we've seen in social media, and they'll be able to help investors understand better. They'll be able to create these really good technologies for the investors. And so that's again another job creation opportunity for youths who are largely jobless, but don't worry about it. And also young professionals, they have podcasts, they can organize like blogs. Like I was able to write my own insights through a blog, which got featured here. So to be able to give young professionals an opportunity like this one, where you can write your insights and be able to share it with the world, and also get called here and talk to people. So that's an achievement. You're able to air out your opinions. talking about posts, when looking at X, especially these recent events, we've seen how young professionals can really mobilize each other for a specific cause. And so if you integrate young professionals into the renewable sectors, they can be able to mobilize through creation of these posters, and they'll be able to be more open, making like opportunities for X spaces where they're able to talk. There are many startups that are not really known by many people. And these CEOs of these young startups can really come online to these X spaces that are organized by youth, and then they introduce themselves and they talk about what they do, and then the youth simplify it for other individuals, and then they can they can be able to get customers. Youths are very supportive of each other. If you come online and say, guys, I sell eco mattresses and I don't have customers, people will buy. Youths are very supportive. So they can be able to help startups which are suffering. Startups rarely get funding from banks because government borrowing increases interest rates, and find that there is a lot of risk in giving startups these loans. And so youths can actually, well, it needs a well-planned procedure, but youths can really inject the money to these startups and be able to help them grow. I've seen a case, I read somewhere online how there was someone who was planting yams in Kitui to help in creating ethanol. But she faced significant problem with funding. It took 5 years. So that's a really long delay, which can be countered with such measures. For long term also, if as a country, we really have good policies, but the problem sometimes is the political stability. And also you find corporations like global indexes for corruption, we are like number 128 out of 180. It doesn't really make our case really good for investors, and they wonder, who are we really investing for? So if we could be able to counter this and there's transparency, investors will be more tuned to investing, which will bring to, again, job creations, improved infrastructure, talking about economic performances. If a place like this, or not this, but like Olkaria, which has geothermal plants, it has really grown. There are companies that come there, even agriculture. So the economic performance is boosted. Again, for this to work, we need partnership with local communities. Locals are very important, and when you agree with them, your business will be safe. So when you give them opportunities, like in Kenyan, when I was doing my internship there, they have an agreement with the local communities. They're the ones who guard the geothermal plants. And you know, they are Maasais, they know how to really guard. So when you give them jobs, again, you're creating employment opportunities, and also you are making a very safe environment for your business and also for the local communities, because you're also doing capacity building with them and they're able to learn more. So short term and long term, there's jobs. For short term as well, when there was flooding, not really flooding, but before flooding, the electricity prices had gone down because there's a lot of electricity being generated by hydro, which really helped in economic performances. And when, like I said, when the prices are down, you can be able to buy more other stuffs like sausages and other luxurious stuff that you like, because you have the money now and you're able to boost the economy.
I think I will cut you short.
Okay.
Time.
Sorry.
See how young people are very enthusiastic, passionate, and they have content, by the way, a lot of it. In fact, I think Elizabeth has spoken the most here today because she is able to. She just kept going and going and had the passion and had the content. And thank you so much, Elizabeth. You've literally given us practical examples of what to do, both short-term and long-term. I hope the students and the young professionals who are logged in have been able to get some of these insights. If you want more details to continue, maybe, actually, this is how you start mentorship. So I believe you're on the right track. Thank you so much for your insights. I will do this question is very simple, very easy. We've already talked about it. In fact, it's already been said. KenGen's Olkaria geothermal plant is Africa's largest geothermal project, which is the oldest KenGen geothermal power plant. Very simple. In fact, I think when Frank was speaking, he mentioned it, which is the oldest KenGen geothermal power plant. As we wait for an answer, my IT team can be confirming if the online panelist is able to join us so that we don't waste more time. Which is the oldest KenGen geothermal power plant? Any answer? We actually said it, you don't even need to run to the website. Or remember, we are giving gifts. So whichever part of the country, whichever part of East Africa you're tuning in from, we will make sure to deliver the gift to you. Anything from online team? Which is the oldest KenGen geothermal power plant? I seem not to. Is there any? Good. I think the first one was Mercy Chir, who said Olkaria 1. Thank you, Dennis, for your comment as well. Mark Richard, Austin, Boniface. Olkaria 1 is the correct answer, but Mercy was the first one to answer it. So the prize and the gift goes to Mercy. George, you seem to be very, very popular. From some of the comments, people are saying, oh, I'm glad to see George as part of the panel. I've seen like 3 or 4 comments. So George, Karibu Sana, CEO of Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. You provided quite a comprehensive review of Kenya's electricity sector in 2023 and a very clear prognosis of how it's supposed to be in 2024. So based on your insights, what are the major trends we should be paying attention to in the next year? And what strategic shift must the sector make to ensure that there is sustainability while we keep growing the energy demand?
Thank you so much. I think first I'll just start by summarizing the article. The article basically was trying to take stock of what was happening in 2023. There were so many things that happened in the sector. And I think as we mentioned earlier, we normally don't document, communicate, have people have a place where they can go and just see. I've done something similar actually in 2022, just trying to see what has happened and summarizing. And then now I also went into this crystal ball kind of thing, saying that 2024 will be like this. I missed the Gen Z thing. It makes you happy. That one I didn't predict. Yeah, but a lot of the topics that I covered there, I think like net metering regulations, which my colleague here has also mentioned. They have been passed. They are now working. There's also what I expect will be a really improved performance of KPLC this year. I think that will still happen. And a few others. I think you can then go to the article. I want you also to read the article. But for next year, and I think colleagues have already mentioned around it, I think the most significant thing that I expect to happen next year is the switching on of the Eastern African power pool market. So now this basically the way we trade power today, in Kenya and Kenya to Uganda or Ethiopia to Kenya, it's normally through what you call a bilateral agreement. It's like you sign a contract that Ethiopia guarantees Kenya, they will give Kenya this much power for this many years at this price. Or you have something like what you do with Uganda, where you give them 100 units and in return they'll give you back 100 units when you need it. So there's no kind of exchange in terms of money. It's just a power exchange. But now the pool introduces a market, and it's called a day ahead market. So in these old ways of exchanging power, you normally sign contracts maybe 20 years, or sometimes as need happens on the energy exchange side. But now when the East African Power Pool market will be launched, now you'll be able to ask for power for tomorrow today. And you just contract based on what you need tomorrow at a certain hour. Now this has some very significant things for the market. It means that we will be able to tap into Tanzania, into Uganda, into Ethiopia, and they will be also able to tap into either our demand or our supply. And we can very quickly, without a lot of kizungu mingi and contracting and all that, you just go to the market, place your bids that you want 200 megawatt tomorrow at 1 p.m. Maybe because you could be aware that maybe a power plant is shut down for maintenance, therefore you don't have the 100 megawatt, and you go and in the market you access the 100 megawatt for the period that you need it at the price during that period. So this one really will shake up the market. For those of us who maybe you might be thinking too domestically that, oh, you're a utility, you just protect your own utility, or you're an IPP and now you're stuck, you don't have anywhere else to sell your power, or you want to expand, but then the market maybe is not moving as fast as you wanted. You're now able to do all these investments and access the market and just sell at the market. Now, how it changes or how we should change, we should now just get out of everything that we think the market is. Because imagine you at Anesco, which is now the KPLC in Tanzania, will be able to say that the IPP in Tanzania is giving me power at 5 cents. But I know at night, I can get wind from Kenya at a certain price, which might be lower. So he can decide that even though you're giving me this power at 5 cents, I'll take it. But I won't take it, but I'll pay for it, but buy power cheaper. And then the difference, I just pocket as my profit. Huh? Mm-hmm. So, and there'll be these kind of opportunities that the power pools will open, not just in us sharing the resources. So if you are able to build more wind in Kenya or more hydro in Uganda, you can go and trade in the power pool, but you can also take advantage of the price differentials, and you can take advantage of them on a day-to-day basis, like one day to the next day. So for me, this is, I think, is the one big thing that we should all be kind of all eyes on. Like this is an opportunity, and if you don't see it, then it could be a threat to you. and we must, as Kenya, I think, if we still want to continue saying that we are always the first mover and all that, we should very quickly adjust the way we think as an electricity industry. We should make our market more flexible to kind of adapt and take advantage of this situation that is going to happen. And a much, I guess, a more internal one for Kenya, I think, is this radical transparency we are seeing. So we will continue to see everything that we do will be questioned. The question about this power plant, that power plant. The Gen Zs are now active, and on X you will find them. I think the most interesting word to use is to pekua. I don't think there's a equivalent English word for that. the kind of meaning it passes through. Yeah? People will look into every other detail that we are doing across the board, whether it's energy or as we've seen in the airport case. So we are called now to be more transparent, be very, I would say, intentional in communicating exactly what we are doing and making sure that stakeholders are aware where we are going. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, George.
Maybe if you can just pitch into
Okay.
to George, because he's reminded me about where we really began in terms of this energy story in the region. You know, in the beginning, in 1954, when KenGen started, we were formed as Kenya Power Company. And the main role for KenGen then was to import power from Uganda to Kenya. That was our main role, nothing else. And you see, over the years, again, we have grown to a point of where now we are able to do what he's talking about, the net metering between KenGen, Kenya, and Uganda. And now we are growing bigger into the region. But in my story with World Bank, one of the things that is said as challenges to the interconnectivity is that bit of a lack of trust among nations. And he brought out the bit of the Ukraine-Russia crisis, where you rely on another country for your power sources. And then as you go along, you start having issues. And then diplomatic fights, people decide to switch off their power plant. How then is your power security? But again, he went on to say that we need to look beyond our borders. And I think that's why the article was titled Beyond Our Borders. Because at the very end of it, even during war, the people in Ukraine saw that you still need power. During the times of crisis, you still need power. When you're happy or not, you still need power. So I think the peace efforts will continue, but at the very end of it, I think power connectivity across the region is something that is going to be the future. And like he's mentioned, 2024 going forward, I think that is a space to look into.
Thank you so much. And I think we'll now have our final panelist, that is Anthony Kahinde. You can be preparing as I do another question. Hopefully I believe this is a very simple question. And as you've seen the conversation, we're really talking about renewable green energy, and you'll find some of our engagement here is to see how to advance this green energy into another level. So did you know that some of the world's largest wind farms are found in Africa? Which is the oldest wind power plant in Kenya? Which is the oldest wind power plant in Kenya? Because of time, I will not wait for the answer. Please type in your answer. I'll be able to see the first person who got this correct. Which is the oldest wind power plant in Kenya? Let's move to our final panelist, who is Anthony Kahinde. He's joining us online. And I'll go straight to your conversation. You talk about why retirement of thermal plants is not the best solution. You'll find most of the conversation we've had here today with the panelists, and I bet even the audience, they're all going to say green energy. You're advocating for 100% transition to green or renewable energy. Then Anthony comes and tells us we should not retire the thermal power plants. So you see, there's a bit of what should we call it, irony there. So why, Anthony, and how do you propose balancing this with a push for the cleaner, more sustainable energy sources? This is a conversation worldwide. We want to move into green energy sources, but you believe we still need to retain some of the thermal plants. Please give us your take on this.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Anthony Kahinde Kenga. I'm an expert in oil and gas, and particularly in relation to this post, it emanated from incessant power outages that we were experiencing as Mombasa. Immediately we had the retirement of Kitev 1. There's also a Tsavo that has joined, and many other thermal stations that have been retired in the nation. And in as much as I agree to the fact that we want to migrate to a zero emission future, there are fundamental issues or points that we need to consider. That is efficiency, we need flexibility as well as reliability. And when you look at reliability and relate it to some renewable energy sources, particularly for solar and wind, then it is clear, like day and night, that you are not able to rely on solar, or neither is wind energy. And as for me, I expected that instead of KenGen retiring the thermal stations, they would rather have considered other alternatives like liquefied natural gas, because that's the part that Tanzania has taken. And basically, if you look at the advantages of this liquefied natural gas, they are way better and are very reliable as compared to other renewable energy sources. And then if you look at it, considering the capacity for Kenya, currently, if you look at the EPRA stats for 2023-2024, it tells you that we are at around 3,200 megawatts. And then if you subtract operational losses and transmission losses also, you'll get to a point whereby we are not able to suffice whatever the demand is. Remember also from the same statistics, there is a growth in the number of customers that are joining the grid. We have more than 200,000 new customers joining the grid, and that is as at 2023-2024, the April report. So then the question is, we are while the demand is going up, then we are cutting short on the supply. So that is a very big challenge, and that is the reason as to why I am opposing the transition, or rather the retirement of these thermal plants. The best alternative I can offer is that we explore other sources like natural gas, because from the post you'll find that there's already Uganda has a joint ship with Tanzania. They have a bilateral agreement with Tanzania that they do a pipeline that can be able to supply them with natural gas. And that natural gas now is going to be used in sectors like the production or generation of electricity. So this is the same path that I wanted us to take as a nation. And also another alternative from natural gas, we also have LPG. LPG is also another alternative, whereby the two, because of their WUB index, you are able to substitute natural gas and LPG. But retirement of these terminals was a very big mistake, because you can see the effect. And as for me, I think maybe no sufficient risk assessment was done, because we are really feeling the brunt of this retirement. And then also one thing that you need to see, okay, we need to learn from developed nations like China, like the US. US in 2011, they migrated from use of coal to natural gas. They did not say that we are not going to use, we are going to retire the coal plants, and then now maybe be able to pursue 100% transition to green energy, which as at the moment, and given the conditions in the Kenyan industry, it's like it's not visible. That one I can agree. And there are so many studies you can be able to find in the internet that are saying that 100% migration to greener energy is not visible at the moment. So we need to go with moderation. We do not want to make a mistake like currently. Yes, we retired the thermal plants, a number of them, and the ripple effect is like we've lost about 80 megawatts from these thermal plants, because the renewable energy is able to give us about 80% of the total capacity. So then retirement then forces us then to go to like to do a lot of imports, because apparently we say that the imports will be at around 400 megawatts, but in actual sense, that's not the point. I think we are currently doing more than 400 megawatts. That is from Ethiopia and Uganda. So you see, the other effect of this also is job losses. I remember I attached at Kengen around 2016, and there were so many service providers there. And I remember also enjoying the food from their canteen. But now those canteen staffs are no longer there. Those jobs are lost. We are importing as well as now exporting the job opportunities. So we need to look at this issue and be able to come up with an affirmative action as how we can stabilize the power capacity in our nation. So I do not agree that we do retirement of all the thermal plants as according to the Kenya Energy Transition Investment Plan. Thank you.
You said is we try and diversify the generation energy mix.
Maybe
And-
can I just weigh in on this discussion?
I
I'm seeing also two of us.
Okay. I want to say this. I agree with the panelists that really we may not be able to retire them at this time. And there was a study that was done, I think, by the ministry. They remember there was a conversation around how then about converting this thermal to gas. You know, there was a conversation around that. And when the IPPs were engaging with government at that time, it was found out the marginal cost of doing that. And given their long stop date, that will impact negatively on the cost implication. It will require them a lot of money. But this is what I wanted to say. Thermal power plants internationally, best practice, are usually picking plants. They are usually plants that you only occasion when you want to fill in your peak demands. So I was thinking, and this is, I know George sits where all these people, he brings all these people together. We had an unfortunate situation around 20 years ago when we had a thermal power plants, because you know that history is there. We didn't have power, it was an emergency, we had to have them to come on board. And therefore they were utilized like 24/7. How about then we revert to picking plants? We only limit the authorization to picking points only, so that when if Lake Turkana fails, for instance, during rainy days, and you know there is an inverse relation between wind and rain. When there is too much intensity of rain, then there is low intensity of wind. Maybe at that time we could be able to do what? Pick, dispatch from the thermal power plants, and we go that way until when they stop their long stop date, which is I think around 8 years from now. The oldest, I don't know, George. And then that is it. So in the whole mix of things, you will find out the utilization from fossil fuels inherently goes down anyway, without even retiring. But also another thing, because now the conversation about GNZ has come up here. Who has ever seen a PPA? Who has come across any PPA? Very few people, okay? So we do not know what is spelled in the PPA. We only hear that it has 25 years, of course, because funders are coming in, and the conversation about if you have to come up with a funding model, it has to capture 25 years and all that thing. So that's how we get that information. But we do not know. Most experts also do not have an idea how an IPP comes. Maybe it's time we begin to, as energy enthusiasts, we begin to bring up the conversation about why not make this PPA public in anything. Let me give you an example. There is one destination, one jurisdiction called Botswana. You know what? That country, in mining sector, that country, when a kid is born, a kid knows two things. Number one, when he's born today, as in this hour, this very minute, a kid knows one thing: her God or his God. Number two, the kind of obligation and engagement that her government or his government has entered into. It is that open. They know the Botswana and the 50-50 in Joaneng, 50-50 share. Why about push that conversation? Now that Elizabeth is talking about Gen Z, and it appears like Gen Z becomes that very push that is, I remember George was saying something that you cannot have a word to replace. The word to replace is called mining information. This group here has an ability to mine information with precision. They have done it. You want your bank account, Judith? Elizabeth will be able to give that information to you. She will tell you how much you remit to KRA. You see, and don't forget that we are living in an era of AI. So these two are existence. So my way of that, my way in was to bring in that aspect. Frank, maybe you could add what you wanted to.
I think that will be the highlight of our discussions today, because I'm seeing George also is holding. We are on our live Twitter spaces, so I'm holding the mic. Then I'll pass on the mic to George. First of all, we would wish to apologize to the sausage makers out there. It was not our intention, but now I'm sure the markets for sausages are picking up, so we can continue on that trajectory. But I think maybe coming back to this discussion, and I don't know where to weigh in, because I'm also government, so to speak. There are countries out there that have done 100% transition into energy, into being renewable energy. And one of them is Iceland. They do a lot of hydros and also geothermal. We learned from them a lot of geothermal. So they moved 100% to green energy. And they are running the economies very well. Of course, if you look at most of the advanced economies, the Americas, Germany, Europeans, all of them, even Russia, they built the economies using fossil energy, which I think at some point they will say about 70% of the carbon comes from transport and energy. It is historical, which is there. But for me, I always look at the world as one room. And if you're sitting in those of you stay in a bed sitter, you know what a bed sitter is? So look at the world as a bed sitter, where you're cooking from one corner, sleeping at the other corner. How do you call a better word for and all those kind of things. So you can imagine if your kitchen becomes extremely hot, because you're cooking using maybe firewood, and the smoke and the fire from there now fills the entire room. That is when you hear people dying of carbon dioxide and everything else. So that is how I see the world as, because already we have capacities in the world that are fossil, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. We are lucky as Africans that we are beginning our development agenda at a time when we are able to take advantage of cleaner sources. Do we want to make the entire world become a bed sitter that is burning, going to kill everybody? So I think there has to be a balance to make the planet remain sustainable. That yes, we went ahead to put in some fossil-based energies, but we have an opportunity of turning green energy, becoming the future of energy. And that's why they are saying Africa will become the future of development, because already we have the space. We can grow renewable energy. And these people then will now be getting energy from us, because fossil energy, much as it is there, it isn't sustainable. So I think as Kenya today, we are at about 93% green energy. There are just a few thermal power plants here and there, even ours. And as Tuo is saying, thermals are best because they pick up very fast. When you're at your highest load, that's when you'd want to use some of them. But it doesn't mean that we cannot do without them. Yes, we can. And I think the government is very keen on 2030, we retire all the thermal power plants, and then we go green. Because what thermal is doing, geothermal can do, because geothermal is a base load. It can run 24/7 without stopping. I think, was it last month thereabout, we saw the peak demand rising to the highest, I think 2,300 thereabout. And most of it was because we're not having the sunshine. And therefore, they had switched off their solar panels. They were using electricity to heat and those kind of things. So as we'll have to find a way of balancing the base loads, which is geothermal and hydro. I can see a future where we'll be able to look at other possibilities like nuclear. I'm sure we've been told we are getting a nuclear power plant coming up about 2034. So those kind of other sources will be there. But I think as Africans, I would wish that we embrace this much and for the first time be the leaders in renewable energy as the other countries copy what we are doing. George.
I know that you're all waiting for my comments. Huh?
Just for your comment.
Yes.
Take 2 questions. So those who are joining us online, please type in your question and we'll take the very burning 2 questions as George concludes on this conversation.
Yeah, so I just want to give some context on this whole matter. I think the article saying that we should not retire the thermal plants, perhaps there's some reason to what he's saying. Not from the point of view of thermal is good, is bad, and renewable is good, but from the point of view of what are the services that plant gives to the grid. For example, in Mombasa or generally the coastal region, we don't have very good quality of supply. Now, why those thermal plants were first planted there is one of the reasons was to support voltages in the coast of Kenya. So now 2 power plants have gone out, one Kengen, one private. They are struggling in terms of voltages and just ensuring that there's enough capacity. We should, I think as a country, my view, and this is, should just look from the context of the country or the specific region where the power plant is. Do we need it for another extra 5 years or 3 years or whatever? And then by the time it has reached the end of its PPA, basically the big elephant in the room, capacity charges, has already gone away. So you can actually get cheaper power from those thermal plants in that small period before you fix the situation there. And fixing here maybe is when you're doing your line from Olkaria to Mariakani and the Mariakani substation. At that interim period before you've sorted things, the thermal plant could still be very useful there. Now, then the next part of the discussion is the switching to LNG. As you said, there was an attempt to at least study this. And I think the gist of it is that it doesn't make economic sense for that one particular power plant to be switched. It needs a much bigger power plant to be able to kind of take advantage of the economies of scale of using LNG. But in general, we will still need, LNG itself is a thermal power plant. Geothermal is actually called geothermal. It's a thermal power plant itself. Nuclear is a thermal power plant.
Yes.
So we will still need, even going forward, just because of the way the renewable and variable renewable energy, wind and solar, because of the way they fluctuate, there will be some need for some capacity either in LNG or other technologies, including battery, to step in and help us to kind of maintain the supply at a certain quality. But of course, no one is sleeping on the fact that the entire world is going green. There will be a lot more green power plants, renewable energy power plants, but still we will still need to have a bit of the thermals to help us to manage the renewables. The East African Power Pool will also help us. I mean, just the way the thermals can help us, we can also get some other sources from Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia. So I would want us to think in a sober way and see what are our problems, what are our options to solve them, how much will this cost, and what do we already have and that we can use for which period. That way, I think the discussion becomes more productive. And finally, ETS. There's a very good World Bank site where you can go, you can download template PPAs, template these agreements between countries and investors. You can have all those documents are available online. You can go and download them. The only, I think what you're arguing about is that maybe you're not able to download the Kenyan ones. But if you're
actually the ones that you are talking about, not
if you're out to learn how a PPA works, these documents are available in the World Bank website. Download them. And then now for the specific Kenyan ones, it's now maybe you're asking more on the accountability side of what's the
accountability.
You see, now that part, at the moment, I don't think we have any repository where you can just go and download. But it's not like they are not there. I mean,
The idea here, Judy,
let me
is
just finish. Huh?
the idea here is
In general, the treasury, with the utility that signs, with the developer. So these documents are available somewhere.
Because George, Frank, Emmanuel, even Judith and every other person in this house knows very well, even when the head of state in the former administration had occasioned the task force to do PPAs, they had a serious challenge to obtain those PPAs. Now, my question is very simple. I'm a student of public policy. If an issue is of public concern, why would you want to conceal that information? It is, your guess is as good as mine. Why would I not want to tell you what our family have entered into? It is basically the issue of transparency. So sometimes, maybe as we navigate, as we progressively become an open society, that should be the thing. That should be the thing to keep in mind. Then another thing that I have seen, I've remembered that we are forgetting about Judith, is in the area, because we are talking a lot about electricity and interconnection and blah, blah, blah. But you're also forgetting about the area of cooking, the clean cooking sector, Emmanuel and Frank. That's an area that we have like totally forgotten. And Kenya has signed a number of instruments. There is something called the National Determined Contribution that spells that Kenya by 2028 will have around some critical mass of people transit to clean cooking solutions. They have signed another one. Recently, we had the Africa Summit, Energy Summit, Climate Summit. Actually, Kenya committed to transit the entire population of 100% to clean cooking by 2040. Maybe also, it's time also we begin to look and give a focus to that area, because we are doing impressively well on this other area. We are on the green path. But when it comes to what now our people are using in our energy solutions to cook, because Frank talked about how the bedsitter can be heat, maybe it's time we begin. And for me, that area needs two interventions. Allow me to mention them. Number one, Judith, is the area of finance. Because sometimes when you want to architect a solution, you must be able to look at the economic imperatives of that country, or rather, the population of the population. Today, charcoal, you can be able to obtain charcoal. I'm capable of charcoal at 50 bob. You know that? We can. 100 we can. But gas, can we? We cannot. Gas, you have to replenish the entire cylinder of either 6 kg or 13 kg. So parting, you can imagine a household in a rural area, parting with, how much is it? 3,000 for, I use 15 myself. 3,200, we use it hypothetically, for example. The other one say even 800. Who is going to, for a day? So I'm looking at it like this. Maybe it's time also industry begin to look at having a technological advancement solution on those infrastructure, such that come get, and I will use one. There is one in the tech space. There is a solution called M-Copper. What these guys do, they come and give you the entire infrastructure of 40K a phone. They give you the entire infrastructure and they tell you, okay, of course, they run you through some parameter to try and find which category do you fit and what will be your ideal payment module. Once they identify that, they give you the entire infrastructure. Then they tell you, so if you are for a month, or you'll be paying this much per month until you are able to finish. If it is per day, you'll be paying 200. So a mama chapati, a mama mboga can be able to acquire a phone of 40K and continue using that infrastructure until he pays. Maybe it's time we begin to look at that in the clean cooking, so that you have a smart kind of an e-cooking kind, so that get it, go. When you have 200, you are able to switch something, you cook for that day, it will replenish. The next day, you'll get some income, blah, 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 blah. The other issue is the issue of finance. finance has been, we need to look at how we are going to unlock finance in ensuring that that area of clean cooking, both in terms of those investors who are impacting and making those technology for the population, get to finance to get those on, so that we enhance and increase adoptability of those technology.
Yes. Because I know,
1 minute.
yeah, in fact, less than 1 minute. I know there are technologies available currently that you are able to do clean cooking in a much cheaper way. And I think this thing cannot happen overnight.
Yeah.
The government has committed, and the Ministry of Energy is working on this very keen, but it's going to happen over time. But if you look at players like Cocoa, they are all over the region.
Cocoa.
You can buy gas as little as 85 shillings. And I think when you replicate this kind of solutions, then it's going to open up how we even change the way we cook at our homes. But I think beyond that, maybe from what I'm seeing here, in future, in the next coming months, we plan to hold a series of these kind of webinars. The next coming one is going to be on the Green Energy Park and industrialization. But I think there's need for one on PPAs. And I'm seeing there's some guy here called Patrick Gikunju, whom I will bring him to the hot seat. And then we will be able to open up and pekua those PPAs.
Yes, I think to challenge we're having our next issue, the energy cost. Please write that discussion.
I will do that.
It's a platform for mind-boggling discussions and just engagement, so that even the next webinar, the next launch, that will be maybe the key discussion. So I'm looking forward to that article.
I'm gladly.
Put your insights there, so
Yes,
that
yes,
Kenyans and
yes.
the world can read and read.
That is it.
Yeah. I want a comment, a more futuristic comment. One way to solve this issue that you have, I've said government offices have these documents, but now they're not available to the public. What we want to do as a country is move into a situation where we're doing energy auctions. In energy auctions, you have all these documents as templates available somewhere you can download. And then you know the template PPA looks like this, and the auction is just about the price. So once you run your auction, you know, he bid 5 cents, George bid 4 cents, and then now you can take that price and put it in the PPA. So when we are in a competitive tendering process, we'll be able to have all these documents as templates that are downloadable by the public.
I think we all agree on that. And I actually want to appreciate the conversation that has begun now, because we all agree we can have good policies, we can have good strategies, we can have all this in place. But if you don't communicate and let the public know, or have public participation, stakeholders come on board, then we will not move. So I think we keep this conversation going, and then we continue as we complement even our energy mixes and all that stuff. We definitely have to keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much. I think basically what you're saying, we cannot continue talking due to time. We'll keep this conversation going. We have, I've been seeing some comments, I've been seeing some questions as well. And also I'll be able to share each of their LinkedIn so that you're able to follow them, get more insights. If you want to ask a question, if you want to engage, if you want to continue with the conversation, please feel free. I will read just 2 comments from the previous, before we moved to clean cooking. We were literally talking about the thermal. So I will read a comment, then I will move on to something that I've seen some of the key questions have been on solar. So I actually had a question. I hope that will be able to actually demystify the solar question that we have been, questions rather that we have been getting. So James says, from where I sit, we need the thermal power plants as grid stabilization and also as peaking plants. We can also utilize the natural gas. I think pretty much what was said. Then Kenya is one of the leading green energy countries. Why can't we use the small thermal power plants till we are able to have enough green energy power? So I think those are some of the comments that we have been getting. So to my last question, which focuses on solar power, or rather solar energy. Solar energy is one of the fastest growing sources of power worldwide, and Kenyan is on the road to adding one of the largest power plants in the country's grid. Where will the Kenyan solar power plant be located, and how many megawatts will the power plant add to the national grid? where and how many megawatts. As you start answering this question, I'll be taking 1 or 2 questions before we wind up. As I said, I will not give KenGen staff the opportunity to answer this question. I want to see if you have been, listening to the conversation, or rather if you've been also going to the media whereby we were able to actually talk about this, whereby where will KenGen solar power plant be located and how many megawatts will the plant add to the national grid? So some of the questions, as we answer that question, there's someone who asked, give me a minute. There's someone who asked, regarding climate change effect, the effect we're experiencing, what is the potential for solar energy to be used in combination with other renewable sources to create a more reliable grid? I think it's a question and also an answer at the same time, because ideally that is it. We are venturing more now into solar as well, so that we are able to diversify the generation energy mix for not just Kenya, but also for Africa. There's also another question here. Is there any answer for the solar yet? So this question is also still on solar. A question, what measures has KenGen put to the solar energy, which is equivalent, more affordable and reliable, and improves energy in the national grid? How can they help those marginalized areas in Kenya, which receives a lot of sun, to build solar power plants in those areas? So as we wait for an answer, I hope we can get that answer from the online team. If not, I will ask my audience here, which solar plants and how many megawatts? Anything from the online team? Because of time, I will give our physical audience the answer. Your name, please. Oh.
Samantha.
Samantha, go ahead, please.
7 foot, and it will be 42.5 megawatts.
Oh, wow. Good job. As Samantha has said, KenGen intends to put up a solar power plant in the 7 Fox dams, and it's going to be 42.5 megawatts. So that, I think, basically gives an idea of what KenGen is doing for the solar energy production. I will take one question, as I promised. I believe there's a burning question from Wilson. Wilson, go ahead, give us your question. And perhaps you can tell us who you think.
You should be commenting and answering.
The best to answer.
Hi guys, how are you? Allow me to put the questions. Oh,
Pass the microphone.
I think as my mother. Yeah. Those printers. I'll focus more on the collaboration aspect.
Yeah.
So quickly, George, I think I appreciate what Kassan is doing. And regards also to the chairman, who is our former, really pushed us to where we are. But mine is just a 2-bit. As I'll ask on behalf of my family, since I can't ask for the engine. So what's the role of the public sector in your role for advocacy? Before Liz and Ziz and Bukanayo, they may give you some campaign, giving us whatever you do in terms of advocacy and psychology and management. Looking at your profile, I'm not seeing any state agency involved in that, maybe by mission or by commission. Let's to know what exactly, how can we partner to ensure that Wanjiko or get the best in terms of the sector. Then secondly, now, in terms of collaboration, I think you and others mentioned about how can we make collectively the cost of power cheaper, the inputs. If we can have those solar panels done here locally, then how are we collaborating with other sector players or other advocacy players in areas like industry, the TVETs, labor, to ensure that all this economic cost production can come down and we can compete competitively with the Chinas and the others. Then my second question is almost all of you, but more to nuclear purity, considering, I believe, you're the R&D coordinator for the sector. Nuclear is one who's been tasked with R&D. There are so many balls up in the air. I'm hearing all these things about energy metering. We have issues of tidal energy, which I'm hoping will come through. We have issues, so many balls. Green hydrogen. That's about the crystal ball. How do we ensure that as a country, as a coordinator, how do we leverage on governments and not government, in terms of issues of policy? And I think we have some experts in the room. Issues of growth, because without government, there's no way you can grow. And private sector, issues of innovation, capital, investment, that comes from you guys. How can you play that role of bringing all these guys into one room so that we can walk the talk? I think all these things that we're talking about, so that we're able to improve data-driven future costs. I think I've had enough of Google. I'm old school, man. Facts. And I think Google, I can go there and say I'm the CEO of Kengen and people will believe that. Amen. So in terms of how can you play that role to ensure that we drive down the cost in terms of future costs, update, and efficiency, not only in Kenya, but in EAC, we have EAC on board. There's so much potential. How do we ensure that some people get their breakfast of choice? Frank said you don't mention because they may lose the market share. How can you guys play that role, and how can we support you in that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just try and yeah, so first, very on ESAC, the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya is basically a private sector association. Other than what we do that you guys publicly see, like we host LinkedIn Lives, we go out on talk shows, and even this, like coming and talking, we also have the advocacy side, or the silent diplomacy, I would say, where we actually sit down with the EPRAs, with Kenya Power, with Ministry of Energy, and we discuss things, and we say these are the issues that are facing us. Can we collaborate and see how we can solve it? Now, the association did not envision having the public sector on board because there are some issues that are very central to the private sector, that at that moment it was felt that it wouldn't be a good mix to handle certain issues. I don't want to go into details, but yeah, we decided that we need to have a forum for the private sector, and at that time, and even now, I think the public sector does meet in terms of the sagas together, sitting together and discussing stuff. So the private sector needed a platform like that, and that's how it ended up being private only. But it doesn't mean that we don't collaborate. Like, even if you see all the advocacy work that we do, we will either have someone from Ministry of Energy, from EPRA, a lot of EPRA, the regulator, and we are very open actually to even do things with Kengen, because there are some things, like even if you talk about PPAs, it's not like only the IPPs have PPAs and Kengen doesn't have PPAs. These issues, whether even the capacity charges and all that many people actually think is just the IPPs. It's a sector-wide issue. It's trying to make people understand that, during that tariff review period when Kenya Power was getting a higher tariff, there was a lot of effort, I think, from both us and the private sector and the public sector to make people understand that Kenya Power is collecting tariff on behalf of the entire industry. And we must do a lot more of those things. We must be very intentional in working together, both us private guys and the public sector, to inform, to put out the information. And again, very good job Frank and the Kengen team are doing with this webinar, with the future webinars, with the energy post, and just allowing people to think. We don't need to be boxed into one way of thinking. Allow everyone to just express themselves. Allow even the Gen Zs to come and say, George, hey, you're lying. And I will try and answer to the best of my knowledge, and that's how we will develop. And then the second question on how we can work together in terms of cost. I think first understanding where the cost issues are. Like, if we need to invest in transmission. I think everybody agrees to that. How is the most efficient way to do it? And then I am a believer in the competitive processes for anything that we are procuring. We must just switch to competition. And then, as I said also on the Eastern African Power Pool comment, competition won't just be in Kenya. we might want to be as protectionist as we can on our utilities, both state and private. But in the end, when the market opens up, you will be protecting something that you can't protect, because the power will be coming from the other side at very, very cheaply. And the consumer doesn't care whether when they switch that light bulb, whether that power is IPP, Kengen, or EPCO, the Ethiopians, or TANESCO, or UETCL in Uganda. They just care that it is cheap and it is there. And I think if we focus on those things and improve transparency, competition, we will be on our way. But we must also be very intentional in communicating that this is not one day kind of thing. It's not like tomorrow cost of power will be half. We invest in power over long periods of time. So even the decline in cost will be gradual. And I think let's come out to the public and just like intentionally communicate the truth. Don't promise because you're cornered. Now you're saying, this one will be 15% reduction next month. So just, I don't want to go there. Just we just communicate and tell them that, you know, the price is subject to these 6 things. These 6 things, like let's say thermal is affected by the price of petrol internationally. Prices are going high. They will come low later. And once people understand, the trust starts to get built. And then also it's easier for us to kind of make the right decisions, not just the convenient decisions at that time.
Can I say something, Judith, shortly in like a paragraph without 30 seconds? Let me weigh in on the issue of partnership. We recently had an assignment to do energy planning for one of the counties. And you know, when you're doing an energy planning for energy expert, you do both planning for energy needs and non-energy needs. Because you do for non-energy needs so that you're able to optimize their involvement, their involvement of the energy on that sector. So we went to, we profiled the sectors, and we engaged in one of the one that now I want to give you was in the agriculture sector. And this is what we found out. So they had a granary, this community, they can call it SACCO or whatever it is, cooperative and something like that, that requires power to power it, to help it increase the life shelves of the maize when they come from the harvester. So we found that the number of bags of grains that were there were lower than the architectured capacity of the whatever. So we wanted to find out what is it. And the farmers were telling us that they have since been, they do not have optimal yield. And there is one pest, I think they called it stock borrower or something like that, that has been affecting them and their harvest and their yield. So they are not able to do what? To have a maximum capacity of whatever. So, and we were like, what's up? Don't you get pests, for instance, pesticides, sorry. And they were like, no, we get them from everywhere, but they don't seem to be solving the solution. So this is what the local community did. They came up with their own innovative ways. And you know what they did? Imagine after planting the maize, around week 6, when the germination of the maize plant has come up, they bury the germination. They bury it. You actually go to in the garden and you see like tumlima mlima. You wonder even what that is. You don't see even a leaf. And this is what they told us. When you bury, the stalk brower is suffocated and it dies. By the time it comes up and the germination doesn't fail to come up, it will eventually come up. By the time it comes up in week 6, 7 and whatever, it can never now again be affected. So this calls, and this is the beauty about, again, local content. In as much as we have these huge technological advancement that may come from the West and wherever it is, sometimes it is very good to work with our people. Why? Because they are able to relate with the situation at hand. They're able to have those. You have, I saw Frank drives a BMW. I think that's what I saw in whatever. Guess what? So we've been having these solutions of the, and it is everywhere. Everyone knows. CG, your headlamp has had some mist. CG, some whatever. CG, now there is a solution on Colgate and how you can apply on Colgate and something. And then when you wipe, it comes as new. So if you are dependent, if you are highly dependent on the external advancement and the technology from the West, what Frank would have done is to make a requisition of, you know how much that is? So the beauty about the whole thing, and that's why I want to underscore the whatever, is can we build partnership and work together that is long lasting and very sustainable in my, yes, home solution. The last one, this one I cannot fail to say, because Judith, you have an online audience globally that is looking at this. You've mentioned solar, KenGen is doing that, there is winds, blah, blah, blah. But you failed to mention that KenGen also equally is coming up with a BES kind of technology that they're architecturing, the battery energy storage that will be able to address the issues of variability, okay? And reduce those challenges that come with reliability or not having that whatever. I thought it is so that the nation also know, or rather the international community also knows that we are fast, not because it's by design, it's by very much default. It is, and I thank Judith, I thank KenGen for being a proactive entity, a very forecasted. I had a friend and I was telling him, it was her, remember? So she was telling me on how Safaricom is the most advanced blue chip company in Kenya. This is the match they remit to KRA and whatever. And I told him, I told her, you don't know, as far as I'm concerned, the only entity that is a blue chip that resembles a serious entity like those ones we find in the West, the Mackenzies, the whatever EABM in the West and the Americans, is KenGen. If you see their balance sheets, then you will divorce. You'll vacate that conversation about how Safaricom earns this much. If you see their operations, if you see how they handle their human resource, thank you.
Well, I'm a lady of few words.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, Purity. Sorry, Elizabeth. Please.
Yes, just to reiterate what my fellow panelists have said. Actually, in my article, I've written about the investment deals, and you can see what KenGen is doing and what they are planning, and it's impeccable. So you can read it normal.
Thank you. Purity, you can finish this conversation.
By the time I'm already forgetting what the conversation is going, and I'm loving the conversation. So maybe to answer your question, if I can remember correctly, yeah, as a coordinating entity, we always strive to say there's a collective responsibility. So we want just to make sure that whatever policies that we do, whatever implementation that we're doing as far as research and the coordination of research are involved, we have from the different institution, different stakeholder, whether it's ministry, we're in the petroleum as well. So we have that technical working group that we work collectively just to get the input from all stakeholders. So we're envisioning a space where we can have a portal where all this information and all this research and everything that we're doing as far as is concerned, people can actually get access to such information. So I hope that answers your question.
I always have this belief. Somehow you always have government is supposed to take every environment to the level of business, right? And that is thing we need to make as people that is going forward. We need to take advantage of the renewable energy space. And with mission carrying today, we have about over agencies that are commercial minded to now go on and do the development, because they can't rely on business. But of course, the issue of bureaucracies has to be addressed. We need to find a way of having a one-stop shop. If I want to set up an industrial park in Kenya or a manufacturing plant, I should not go through very many corners to be able to set up. It should be made easy for people to come together and set up. Judy, I think we overate your time.
Thank you so much, my able and insightful, informative panelists. Thank you so much to the audience. As we present to you this second edition of the Energy Post magazine, I can confidently say that we are sharing in the power of collaboration, the power of partnerships, the power of innovation and sustainability, so that we are able to drive positive change into the energy sector. We are no longer talking about regionally, we are talking about not even Africa, we're talking about globally. So this is what we are here today. Remember that the future is not something that you inherit. The future is something that you create. So I think with this conversation here, with this platform and dialogue that we've had today, I believe we are creating the future, the next future for the energy sector. Let us draw inspiration from these stories. Please get your copy and get to know what we've discussed is pretty much even 40% of what the articles are all about. Join us together in shaping a brighter, more sustainable future in Africa for generations to come. As I've mentioned, you can get a digital copy of the Energy Post on KenGen's website, that is kengen.co.ke. Go to the information center and the fourth icon, you will see the Energy Post. Download it, you'll be able to actually also get the very first issue. And we look forward to your contributions into the third issue. How can you contribute? Write to us at energypost@kengen.co.ke. We actually are calling for articles at the moment for us to be able to consider your article for the third issue. First and foremost, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our writers, our panelists, our contributors. This is just 50%. It's not we could not have everyone come here and talk about the articles. So we hope going forward, we'll be able to actually have a much more elaborate mix of the writers of the Energy Post. Thank you to our partners and to our stakeholders, and of course, our readers and those who are joining us as the audience here virtually and also physically. We really appreciate you taking your time to listen in, to contribute, and to just advance this conversation that we felt has been, we didn't have the platform to talk about such conversations. So stay tuned, as I think Frank had mentioned, we should be having a similar webinar, which will discuss more about the green energy path. Stay tuned, we'll be giving you more information on this. So from the KenGen editorial team, enjoy the reads. We will catch you in the next issue. Hoping to hear your great insights, hoping to have you contribute. Asanteni sana.
We're free to go.
Producer.